Among tight end, usually I use 50 targets as the floor, is the measuring stick for tight ends. But Darren Waller only had 43 last year. So among tight ends with 43 or more targets, Kyle Pitts and Darren Waller had by far the highest ADOTs. Now, Jamie's going to make the argument that Darren Waller is one of the best values. Dave is going to talk about Kyle Pitts being one of the best values here. Their ADOTs were way too high. We don't really have to talk about this, but they had the highest ADOT for any tight end with 43 or more targets in the last 10 seasons. It was over 13.4 yards for both of them. And that's just crazy. And I think they'll have more success with a more reasonable ADOT, even if it's, 11, 12, something like that. But it just too high. You just don't see successful tight ends with that high of an ADOT. Why don't we start with the tight ends then? We'll go a little out of order here. And Jamie, you're going to say Darren Waller, who's tight end 7 at 75th overall, according to NFC average draft position in July. And Dave, you're going to say Kyle Pitts, who is tight end 5, but only 5 picks ahead of Waller. So they're going in the same range. Jamie, you can start. Tell me, if you believe this, why Waller is better value than Pitts.
I think they're both incredible value. But again, if we're talking about a tier and getting a guy at the end of a tier, I would, rather wait to see if I can get Waller later, depending on where I'm picking. Now, clearly ADP is a little skewed by that because of how close they are. But I just think that the setup for Darren Waller, if he had not, but let's just, and again, you can play the same game with Kyle Pitts, but if he had not gotten hurt the last 2 years and had continued to produce at the level he's at and switch teams still, just because the Raiders wanted to move on from his contract, we'd still be talking about this guy as a top 3 tight end. And he's still got that upside. I know he's a little bit older, and I know the quarterback change may not favor him to the same level of what he was able to produce with Derek Carr in that offense. But I think people overlook Brian Daboll's history. He used to coach tight ends. He used to be on the Patriots staff when they had Ron Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez there. There's a lot to love about this offense and what it should be able to do. And you've certainly seen plenty of jokes and heard plenty of jokes about what this offense looks like. There's 55 slot receivers, 2 outside guys that, don't have the best track record in Slayton and Hodgins. And Darren Waller was their prize acquisition in the passing game. And so if he stays healthy, he's going to challenge to be one of the top 3 tight ends. I don't doubt that. And so if he can stay on the field, if he can be what he's capable of doing, I think there's a huge ceiling in front of him. So the later guy for me is the better value.
And Dave, so it goes Pitts, Goddard, and Waller all within 5 picks of each other. And you put Pitts on there instead of Goddard, instead of Waller. So if they're going around the same range, you think Pitts is a better value than Waller?
I think he's got more upside than Waller. And both of these guys are behind George Kittle, which is really what shocked me. Kittle shouldn't go ahead of Pitts. And I think in PPR, he probably shouldn't go ahead of Waller either. But I'm not a big fan of either of the older tight ends. I love that Kyle Pitts was top 10 among tight ends in targets per game, a 28% target per route run rate last year. That was 22nd among all tight ends and wide receivers. Just a huge number. His ADOT was deep. You talked about that. He averaged 2.9 yards of separation per NFL Next Gen stats. His problem last year was that Marcus Mariota couldn't find him. 30 targets of 11 plus air yards, 16 of them were deemed uncatchable by True Media. It's a nightmare watching that film because he's open, he's schemed well, and the ball is thrown and it's a miss so often. Very frustrating. The problem is that Desmond Ridder actually had a lower adjusted completion rate last year on deep throws and intermediate throws compared to Marcus Mariota. But where Ridder can win now is on those shorter throws. You talked about the ADOT going down. I think we're going to see that across the board in Atlanta. I think we're just going to see shorter throws and not as many deep targets. If Ridder is accurate, Pitts will get schemed open, and hopefully he'll have a lot of yards after catch. I think he's got great upside. I love his schedule, and I love him to be the top target getter in Arizona's offense. So I will take Pitts. I don't mind Pitts in like round 5, 6. I think that he's got that type of upside to finish as tight end 2 this year.
He definitely has more upside, but I don't think he plays for Arizona.
Well, I said Arizona? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, at least I didn't say the Eagles won the Super Bowl.
I did say the Eagles won the Super Bowl yesterday on yesterday's show. I said the Eagles won the Super Bowl. That was weird. Nobody corrected me. So it's on Jamie and Heath too. But they did not win. I just watched the game again. They did not win the Super Bowl. So Jamie, do you agree though that Pitts has more upside than Waller?
Oh, if he hits, for sure. I mean, this is just a freak of nature, but he's, able to do as an athlete. The problem is his quarterback and his offense. I mean, that's huge negatives for him, which is just unfortunate. Unless Desmond Ridder is going to completely surprise us, or as Heath, sort of alluded to yesterday, does Taylor Heineke get the opportunity to start at some point if Ridder really stinks? They're going to run the ball still so much, and now you have these two. I don't want to say they're alphas yet because they haven't proven it yet, but they have two guys in this offense that command targets. In an offense that's going to run the ball 550 plus times again would be my guess. Why else would they draft Bijan Robinson? Plus what he's going to do in the passing game, which is certainly different than what the guys they had last year. No matter what you think of Cordell Patterson as a pass catcher, Bijan Robinson is probably better at this point. And so I think just all these mouths to feed in a run-first offense just lowers the ceiling of what Kyle Pitts could be. And believe me, I'm drafting plenty of Kyle Pitts. I love this. Like I said, I think this is great value for him in this spot. And so I took him in the Fantasy Pros draft that I did with the guys there yesterday. I took him in the Scott Fishbowl. I'm taking Kyle Pitts if I'm looking to win my league. But I feel the same about Darren Waller as well. So I think both those guys have immense upside. One is just younger and at the start of his career, and that's, I think, where the difference